I'm Brandon Amoroso, and this is the D2Z podcast, building and growing your business from a Gen Z perspective. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to D2Z, a podcast about using the Gen Z mindset to grow your business. I'm Gen Z entrepreneur Brandon Amoroso, founder and president of Retention as a Service agency, Electric. Today I'm talking with Prakash, the CEO and founder of Windsor.io. It's a tool that we only recently discovered, I want to say a couple of months ago, that we've been working a fair amount of Electric clients on and just super excited about its potential. So I'm really excited for you to get to dig into that a little bit more, but also just excited to pick your brain on a bunch of other stuff as well. So thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Brandon.
So before we dive into things here, can you just give everybody a quick sort of background on yourself and little intro, and then we can go from there?
Yeah, let's do it. So like you said, I'm Pranay. I run Windsor.io, which is a video marketing platform for D2C brands. So the first product that we've been building is this AI video personalization tool, which lets brands record videos and then be able to mass personalize them to customers. So we're seeing brands use this for things like post purchases, abandoned carts, whatever, everything that we typically have been doing through email and just regular text emails, being able to finally do that with video at scale to help improve, one of the big things being retention, which is why we've been working with you.
Awesome. Well, for Windsor, where did the idea sort of spark or come from?
Yeah, that's a great question. So about 2 years ago, my co-founder and I were working on a different business. It was just the two of us. And we were getting into had been building this product and started trying outbound sales for the first time as a channel for what we were building at the time. And I mean, kind of similar to you, I think we're quite young. We started our business right out of college, didn't have a lot of experience doing much else. So brand new to sort of all of these different sales motions, brand new to cold outreach for the very, very first time. So we were quite surprised, I think, we knew cold outreach would be pretty bad and wouldn't work super well, and we'd have very, very low response rates to those. But I think we were really surprised by how low those response rates actually were for just, mass cold outreach. It did sort of feel like a spray and pray approach. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, while I was focused on that, my co-founder, Andrew, went out and just on his free time, bought this sweater from some small store in Australia. And the store owner from there recorded this video on his iPhone, which he sent over to Andrew. And the video was just, "Hey, Andrew, thanks for supporting a business. I'm packing your sweater. It's right here. It'll be there in a week or two." And so Andrew showed me this video, which blew my mind for a couple of reasons, right? The main thing was Andrew not only watched this video from a business, he then responded to the person and shared it with friends. And I think those two things, responding and sharing it with a friend, was something you never hear of when it comes to businesses communicating with people, right? None of my cold outreach emails would have ever inspired that kind of an action. And so I think that was the first idea for, wow, video really does work. But we still hadn't really thought about starting a company around video. I think at the time it was just, let's start using video for ourselves on our own business and let's start recording our own video. When we started to see how well that was doing for us, that's when we decided that this was going to be a much better business than what we were working on at the time.
That's awesome. It sort of came out of a necessity that you had in your existing business, and then you're able to pivot and turn it into something that you can take out to the entire industry. What led you to sort of align on e-commerce as your focus point?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. We spent a lot of time. It actually wasn't super obvious to us. So, initially, of course, we got this video in the context of e-commerce from a business, but we began applying it for our own sales, outbound outreach sort of processes. And for a long time, I think Windsor was focused more so on, we wanted to build out the sales pipeline. We wanted to get SDRs and BDRs from tech companies around Silicon Valley to start using Windsor for their outreach. But we also started to see a few e-com stores come in, begin to use the product. We had politicians use it. We had teachers and fundraising. We had all sorts of use cases on the platform. But I think over the next 4, 5, 6 months that we began to run the business, we were just obsessing about the data, right? So for us, all that mattered was the actual data for every single store, or say not store, every single customer of ours, and what was the ROI for that person, and also the usage patterns for us. We're always looking at how many videos people are creating, what are the open rates like, how well are they performing, how long are people watching those videos. And as we started to look into the data, it just seemed very clear to us that even though it worked for almost every silo or every single vertical that we focused on, it had outsized returns for D2C. So the kinds of numbers that we would see, the kinds of responses we would see for D2C just worked far, far better. And so we decided to focus full in on that.
Did you get your first clients for Windsor using Windsor technology?
That's a great question. I wish we did, because that would be a really nice answer. But
you can just tell people that you did. I mean, like, there's the real story, and then there's the founder story. So you can.
Well, I guess
put a nice little spin on it.
I guess sort of, but no, the real story is pretty fun too. At the time, we didn't yet have the technology, so we didn't yet know how to do sort of the AI personalization that Windsor is known for. But we knew that if we could figure this out, this would be pretty valuable. So one of the first things I did was record a video. I just recorded a video. I guess first I Googled around and just tried to figure out what the most common American English name was. And turns out it was David. So I just recorded a single video where I basically said, "Hey, David, this is Pranay from Windsor. This video is actually a deep fake personal video. I didn't record this, even though that was a lie, and I actually did." And I started sending that. Yeah. So I took my entire list of people and sent it to a list of people called David. And the feedback was, wow, the quality of that is incredible. I didn't notice it was a deep fake because it wasn't. But I think that was the start. So the very first video was me lying about this being a deep fake video. But when we got a customer through that, we were like, cool, give us 2 months and we'll actually build this out.
Got it. That's awesome. Yeah. That's like the perfect, what's the term? Like MVP, I guess, where you got to see that there was some actual demand for it before going ahead and investing in building out the product.
Yeah, no, I think we're strong believers in sort of the fake it till you make it and crappy. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of pretty cool startups and apps coming out now, or who have been out for a little bit, but that have taken that approach versus some other companies you've seen where they go and raise a ton of money and it's like complete either go big or go home. And I think some of the more unique tools I've been seeing are coming out of the first approach, being a little bit more scrappy and frugal with investment, not necessarily like for Enquire Labs, now Fairing. I think he started it with like his friends to just make some money to go out to more dinners, and then did it for like 2 years like that before deciding to even go out and potentially look at how do we scale it. Some of the coolest tools I think have come out of that. But how long ago did you start it?
Yeah, so on that note as well, I very much agree with the coolest tools are the ones where people are solving for their own problems. And sort of I feel like the right way, and this is definitely an opinionated, biased version of this, is you build, you solve a problem, and you have an idea, you solve a problem, and then if it seems right, you build a company around that. As opposed to, I think a lot of the mindset I've seen recently as well is, I want to build a company, let me get a bunch of money to do that, and then figure out like what I'm going to build. I see a lot of both those now because capital has become so easy to get in Silicon Valley, especially. But anyway, just a side note on that. We've been running this for, so Andrew and I started the company out of college back in 2018, but that was something, we were working on something entirely different at the time. Kind of like I mentioned, we raised a little bit of money and we're working on this for this analytics product that we were building at the time for startups. And I think we ran that for about 2 years, a little bit over 2 years. Did not raise too much money. We were starting to see the end of the runway when we sort of got to that point and got to the point where, hey, we had a couple of months of money left in the bank, and we had this sort of like sales growth thing that had just happened. We're like, cool, this video thing could work. If this is going to work, we need to go all in on that. So I guess we've been running the company for 4 years, but it's really just been about less than 2 years on Windsor itself.
Got it. It's not a crazy amount of time. So it's cool how much traction you've been able to get. And it feels like 2023 is probably going to be the biggest year yet for you in terms of that new merchant adoption and everybody using it within their tech stack.
Yeah, no, I'm excited.
What would you contribute your success up until this point primarily on? Is it, especially in terms of customer acquisition, are you primarily getting it through like referrals, through agency partners, tech partners? What's been working, and sort of what are your focuses for this year?
Yeah, and that's been one of the nicest things this time around is, we also came from that whole trying to struggle with cold outbound and all of that. But with Windsor and with the D2C space, I think also just because of the nature of our product, it's all been inbound and referrals so far. And I think it's just one of those products with Windsor where once you see it is a video, or once you actually see the video for the first time, you either get it or you don't. But if you get it, people immediately want to show it to all their friends and go like, wow, this blew my mind. And so just because of the nature of Windsor and what the product is, it's been really helpful to just get customers that way. So we haven't really spent a lot of effort and money on going outbound. It's really just been referrals so far.
Got it. Are you thinking about investing in outbound, or are you going to see how far sort of referral takes you before thinking about exploring that?
We're going to be investing a little bit further into outbound in the next in the next 2 quarters, actually. So we're launching the Shopify app in a few weeks here. So when we launch, along with launching that app, we want to start investing in some of that outbound. I think inbound is a great channel and it's been working well, but we really haven't even tried outbound to know how well it's going to go. So it's at least worth the investment.
Got it. When it comes to the Shopify app, what is, like, for those who aren't familiar with it, what's the difference between like an unlisted app and a listed app? And like, what's the process that you have to go through in order to like actually get a public facing app up on the Shopify store?
Yeah, I'm very much like in the weeds of this right now. So to the best of my understanding, because we're going back and forth with the Shopify team as well. So creating an unlisted or even like a private app on Shopify is the easiest way to get started. You basically get access to all the APIs. You can build an app however you'd like to, but you can really only deploy it for specific stores that you are a part of. So that's actually how we started. When we had stores that we were working with, we would just have them invite us to their Shopify app or their Shopify team, and we could just build that app for them. And it's a great way to start prototyping with your initial couple of stores. You can kind of launch that into an unlisted app, which then Shopify will not put on their app marketplace, will not advertise to people. So you don't get any of the benefits you sort of don't get to use Shopify as your growth channel itself or your discovery channel. It's just like you have a product and you have customers on there already, and then you want to offer sort of an invisible Shopify integration within your app, but you can't expect to have new customers learn about your app while using Shopify. And that's the big difference. I think it's really valuable today, where Shopify has been seeing themselves as this way and doing a really good job at this, which is it's more similar to think of it as like the Google App Store or the Apple App Store, where people are more likely to discover your app while browsing the Shopify App Store, as opposed to the other way around. And if that really matters to you, which we see so common, there's so many businesses that are completely built on the Shopify App Store, and that's their entire growth channel, then you want to be a public listed app that comes with much stricter, like they have deeper dives into the app to make sure that not only does everything work, but that you really do care about privacy and data security and things like that. Make sure that you're GDPR compliant. So when people uninstall the app, you'll get rid of the data. And then one of the important things is also using Shopify's payment APIs, which a lot of that is so that Shopify can also keep their percentage of cut when they do refer customers to you. So it's a couple of those things that they want to make sure you're compliant with.
Got it. Well, that's an interesting sort of tip to go the private app route first before going through the process of getting it publicly listed on Shopify's marketplace. And I think they just recently, they're waiving all fees on the first, what is it? Is it the first?
I think it's the first
$1 million?
I think it's the first million or the first 2 years, whichever comes first, something like that. But yeah, I'm not super sure.
Yeah, I think the biggest benefit to me of Shopify is the ecosystem. So it's cool that they continue to invest in that and make it easier for entrepreneurs like yourself to be able to create really interesting and unique products on top of their platform, because it just helps them in their own process of onboarding new merchants and continuing to innovate on the platform.
Yeah, no, I think it's been a really smart move from Shopify as well to go beyond just being the product and being the entire platform, because I think that's how you really build this wedge. And they're going beyond the Shopify app, just as sort of being a place to list things. They've also started to invest in businesses that are on the Shopify app store. So most recently, they had a huge investment in Klaviyo, which I think has been a little controversial about sort of setting that up as the de facto email marketing SMS client, but also is cool to see that if you're killing in the Shopify app store, Shopify, may invest in you, which is always exciting to see as somebody building on there.
Yeah, I mean, realistically though, whether they invested or not, it sort of is the de facto platform when it comes to Shopify. And it's interesting how that's happened for like a couple of solutions, but then there's others where there's so many competitors and they haven't really consolidated yet. And so it'll be curious to see how things shake out over the next 5 years here, as a lot of these companies, based off of the timeline of when they raise their capital, will have investors looking for exits or what's happening basically. And most of them are not profitable, if not all of them are not profitable. So like, where do they go? Are they going to get consolidated? Or are they just going to go out of business? If they didn't take the approach that you took, being lean and scrappy, they have pretty high expectations sort of on top of them. And I don't think every app is meant to be like $100 million plus app. And there were a lot, I think, that raised like that, even though there's just not the market for it based off of the size of the TAM for whatever the particular solution is. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there.
No, absolutely. I think there's going to be a big reset here in the whole financing venture world. I think 2021 was one of the craziest years with all interest rates being so low. All the VCs we just had so much capital that people were raising at much, much higher valuations at multiples we hadn't seen before. And it felt quite easy. There were also these, there's been a number of programs recently that are basically they'll give you $5 million to start your company so that you can then go figure out what your company is and who you want to start it with. And basically it's just, this is the person, you have no idea what you want to build, but we'll give you $5 million to build something. And we started to see all of this back in 2021, where it was so easy to raise capital. And then I think 2022 has started to reset that a little bit.
That's awesome. Are they still around? Because I would love $5 million to just go figure out what the hell I want to do.
I think you can still do it. I still hear that story often, but it's just not 5 million. Now it's like $1 million or sub-million, which is still really good money if you want to do something, and it at least gets you out of your job and gives you the time to focus on, what you care about.
Yeah, that's true. I think 5 could be almost a distraction. It's too much money. Maybe $1 million is the sweet spot. the fundraising component to entrepreneurship, I feel like is you almost sort of need two different skill sets. There's being an operator, building out a team, being able to create a product that actually has market fit. But then there's the other side of the coin, which is managing burn, dealing with investors, raising the appropriate amount of capital, not too much, not too little. If you raise too little and then you run out of money, then you're shadow law. But if you raise too much, then there's other issues that come with that. And so I feel like you really need to be able to wear both hats or have a good sort of founding team where you can divvy up those responsibilities. Where do you find yourself spending most of your time?
I think it's you talk about different responsibilities here as well. Well, one of the big learnings for me was starting to see a lot of the job of like the CEO in a venture-backed company as being a salesperson, and so not just because like most of your job. Actually, I think here's a good way to put it. People think as a CEO or as a founder, and you probably know this really well as well. The common conception is that you don't have any. You sort of have full freedom, and you don't respond. You don't report to anybody. But in reality, that's not true, right? You
report to everyone.
You report to everyone. You're responsible for not just your employees. You also report to your customers. Like you have a duty to your customers, and you also have a duty to your investors. So everybody you interact with is somebody that you have an obligation or responsibility to. So if you think about it the same way, those are sort of the three wide buckets of people that you have employees, you have customers, and you have investors. And so when we think about fundraising, I think of it the same way, which is when you're a salesperson to a customer, your job is the exact same thing for an employee. You're going to be spending a lot of time work with employees, convincing them to come join your startup, motivating them to work on the right things. So you're constantly selling your ideas and your vision and sort of like how you want to build the company, the culture. You're selling that to your employees. If you talk about fundraising, it's the exact same thing. If you sort of structure it and have that same mindset, the same things that you would apply to running a sales process with a lead is how you would run a fundraising process with an investor. And the way you deal with customer success and support for a client is the same way that I sort of treat investors and working with them as well. I think that mindset's been really helpful to sort of think about it as most of your skill set that you need as a founder, or the muscle that you flex as a CEO or founder, is that sales muscle, just in as many contexts as possible.
Got it. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I think in my capacity, I'm spending most of my time selling. Just depends on what I'm selling and who I'm talking to.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So are there any, I guess, tips or suggestions that you'd give to other technology founders or those who are looking to go on their own sort of entrepreneurial journey here that you would have wished you knew 2 years ago?
That I wish I would have known 2 years ago.
Or before starting.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
I think one of my first pieces of advice has always just been to a lot of people that are still thinking about starting a company and haven't done it yet and are waiting for whether it's like the right idea or especially if it's you feel like you're not ready and you need to develop more skills, like by getting a job and you want to be a better engineer or a better manager and you want to develop these skills outside before you start your company. Sorry, can you still hear me? There's a fire engine outside.
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay, apologies for that. I live in a busy street.
No worries.
Yeah, as I was saying, if the reason you aren't starting a startup yet or starting a company or business or whatever and following that dream yet is because you feel like you want to develop more skills outside and you feel not ready, I always just recommend doing it and not waiting too long, because the best way to learn something is just by doing it and failing. And you probably will get a lot of things wrong. Like we've gotten so many things wrong in the last 4 years, way more than we got anything right. And just getting it wrong while doing it will teach you a lot more than trying to develop skills elsewhere. So yeah, I think my first piece of advice, really just a big one that I see too often, is if you're thinking about doing it, you should be doing it.
No, it's like taking the entrepreneurial leap. I think it's scary, especially as you get older, have more responsibilities, have to worry about people other than yourself. I think for me, it's just me when I started electric, so it really didn't matter. It's not like anybody was reliant upon me to support them, or I had some like high paying job that I was going to be leaving to go and try and make something. And I can only imagine the sort of the back and forth that people have to go through when deciding whether or not they're going to go out and do their own thing, given the context of their situation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we all get stuck in that loop because it is a big scary decision and jump. But I think a lot of us, I definitely feel like I took a little too long even to get into. Actually, remind me, Brandon, when did you start electric, and how did you get into that?
I started it while I was at USC, about my second year, but it was just me for a year, sort of freelancing and trying to figure out what the hell I was doing. Well, we're all still trying to figure out what we're doing, but I think it was like mid 2019, which is right when I graduated, around like year 3 at USC, and so I had the benefit of getting to build it to a point where it could support me during school versus starting it after and having to juggle maybe like another job and then also doing that. So got lucky in that sense, where it was at a place where I could go into it full time at graduation. Still, I mean, yeah, you have to I had to turn down some significantly more stable opportunities, but
yeah,
it wasn't anything crazy. And I think that's like the best time to try and start something is in college, because you have a bunch of free time on your hands typically, unless you do some crazy degree, which I didn't. I got a business degree, which is basically like a degree in talking to people. And so that helped a lot. There's a lot of free time. So I structured my classes Tuesday, Thursday, and then Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'd have the full day just to work, and basically use it as an opportunity to try and create something so I wouldn't have to go get a quote unquote real job after graduation.
No, that kind of discipline is incredible at that stage as well. So we're very much the same. Like I graduated back in 2019 or end of 2018, and so you started your company in the second year. I started in the fourth year. But kind of to the point what I was saying earlier as well, I think I spent way too long on I knew I wanted to do this and sort of had these ideas, but was very, very worried. And the trap that I fell into was always thinking that tomorrow would be a better day for whatever reason that is, right? So even my second year of college, I was like, oh yeah, I want to get through all of this stuff and my visa is going to be a problem. And I just want to focus on I want to graduate and have a degree, and these things matter. And once I have all of that, it'll be easier to do the startup. But that's not true. Even years in college, I feel like you might be losing them, because when you get to the fourth year, you have suddenly you realize that you're going to need to start earning money. You don't really have a lot of savings. You definitely haven't saved anything through college, and you start to get job offers that are very, very distracting and very, very lucrative. So it's really hard coming to your fourth year with 2 or 3 job offers, along with that pay you 3 times as much than what you might earn in the next 5 years running your own company.
Yeah.
So starting the second year, being able to get to that position you got to, which is when you graduate, it's nothing crazy, and the startup that you have is actually earning you enough money that it's a much more viable option. Those years in college are the right time to also work on things. Like you don't really have a lot of responsibilities and you have school. But yeah, it doesn't get easier. Your situation, I don't think it's very, very unlikely to be in a better position later. You're only going to have more responsibilities. There are some exceptions if you have maybe a lot of debt that you have to get through first, or some family obligations, then I understand that. But I think I and a lot of people just fall into this trap of finding reasons to say tomorrow will be better that aren't really good reasons. And I think you sort of overcame that really early.
Yeah. And now I feel like since we've done it once, it'll be significantly easier to do it again.
Right.
Because it's not nearly as scary or intimidating. And I find it to be significantly more rewarding than other potential opportunities that I had or even worked on during school. But I think I could see myself, like, as long as you're at a company where you have vision and purpose and there's sort of meaning behind what they're doing, I think that's the most important. So like not everybody has to be an entrepreneur. Like you could go work at Windsor, for example, and it's like fun, scrappy, you're building something. You can buy in just because it was your idea and vision and you're the one spearheading it. Doesn't mean that there can't be people who are a significant part and contributor of that. And so I think that would be a good way also to try and like dip your feet into the entrepreneurial pool and see if it could be something that you're actually interested in before going and making the leap yourself.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think the advice kind of more generally applies to things outside of just being an entrepreneur, right? If there's, I think it's more so, and I haven't thought too much about this, but anything where you're stopping yourself because you feel like you're not ready, and doing more time in your current activity will help you get there. Usually, I feel like is the less efficient option. So, just a good analogy on a different note is I've been spending some time recently relearning Mandarin, and there's sort of like two ideas here with learning languages that's been really fascinating to me. The way that schools tend to teach people languages is you study all of this grammar and you study all this vocabulary and you study everything that you need to like be able to get to a point where you can then watch a movie in that language, like watch Chinese movie or talk to somebody in Chinese. But when you get to that point, you'll always be surprised because you don't know any of the colloquialism. The speed that people talk at is very, very different. So it's really hard to get from spending 2 years of learning any language in school and then being able to actually be fluent. Everyone will tell you that studying languages in school is nothing like actually having that experience. Yeah. The way to learn that I've been experimenting right now is just throwing myself right into the deep end of like, I maybe have just learned 10 or 15 words of the language and I'm already trying to watch movies as much as I can. I don't understand anything that's going on, but that's sort of like throwing yourself right into the deep end of like, this is where you want to be ultimately, right? It doesn't, everyone that's learned Chinese natively didn't sit and start with the textbook. They learned a lot of it just being there. And then you learn the grammar and you learn everything around that later on, sort of by doing it, if that makes sense. I know it's a weird analogy, but very much applies, I think, to jump into the deep end in general. Yeah.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense because it would be impossible to learn everything that I've learned in the past 3 years through textbooks or through standard curriculum. There's just so many changing variables and things that you immerse yourself in that can't be replicated. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on. Before we hop off here, can you let everybody who's listening know how they can get in contact with you if they're interested in Windsor and want to start putting some more personalization into their retention strategy, or if they just want to chat and get to know a little bit more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. There's two great ways to start using Windsor. One is start working with Electric because we work with Electric.
It's a great plug. It's a great plug.
Absolutely. Brandon's awesome. So, and then the other way, of course, is just check out windsor.io. That's windsor.io. Check out some of the videos, sign up for an account. It's basically free to get started. And yeah, if you do want to upgrade, need any help with anything, you can reach me directly at just my first name, Pranay, at windsor.io.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. As always, for everybody listening, this is Brandon Amoroso. You can find me at brandonamoroso.com or electricmarketing.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.